don't see doubling up very often. Good evening. It's my honor to welcome you here this evening to do a whole lot in a relatively brief period of time. Dave is part of your life, and he has lived. He has now died and gone on to be with God. So as a family and friends, it's the tradition not only of the church, but every culture around the world does some rendition of what we are going to do right now. Firstly, you can't help but remember at a time like this, and I want to let you know that in just a few minutes as part of the service, the family invites anyone present. If you'd like to say something to this gathering, if you'd like to share a memory that you have of Dave, or if you'd like to share a word with the family, you're going to be able to do so. And I try to say things out loud when appropriate, and sometimes when not appropriate too, but it's really hard to do. So nobody here is twisting your arm to speak. But if you would like to say something, please collect your thoughts. That time's coming right up. We are here as well to hopefully help you on this journey that you now find yourselves on, and that is the unchosen journey of grief. You would think that we get used to saying goodbye to people who we love when they die. I don't know about you, but I think it's one of the hardest things that humanity does. Even though death is a natural part of our lives, truly it is. We try to explain this to our children and grandchildren, but when it happens to someone in our circle, it almost never ever feels that way. So we are here to grieve as well. We are here to celebrate faith, and I know Dave's a scientist, so he has many questions just like most of us do. Only he probably could articulate them in a more eloquent way. But we are here to celebrate faith. And I also know, especially whenever we gather the way we are right now, as family and friends, in the afterglow of a loved one's life, we always come together as well to find just a little piece of comfort. And we get comfort in this hour because you care to be in you care to be here right now. And we also believe, scientists in the group, give me a little slack, we also believe that God is here as well. So I invite you, let's have a moment of silence, and we'll center our thoughts and have it says in the program that I'm giving the blessing. Let's have a moment of silence. Contemplate all that is, Lord, we indeed are grateful. Today, as we gather with Dave's people, we're especially mindful of people who have hurting hearts because he has died. Thank you for this good company, people who has come together this evening to lend strength and love and support. May all that we do right now honor Dave as well as you. We give you thanks. Amen. It's a tradition to read from the Holy Scriptures. I want to read one brief word to you from the Old Covenant Scriptures. This is from Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and also a time to gather them together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. May the reading of God's word be a blessing to you. sung by a great niece, Dr. Holly. I mentioned you would have opportunity to share and speak and remember out loud. To begin our time of remembering, longtime friend Bob Myers is going to share a eulogy about Dave, and then after he concludes, you're invited to do the same. Mr. Myers. This is like handing the baton off.
Tracy, Kelly, Aaron, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I appreciate it. Coming today, I finally met somebody that I've heard Dave talk about for a long, long time, Sister Diane. So Diane, it's been a pleasure to meet you. What does one say about a friend of over 50 years? Dave and Nancy moved to Grand Island, Nebraska, and lived a floor above Marie and her roommate, Nancy Underkoffler, at Normandy Apartments. Nancy, being a music teacher, formed a quick bond with Marie, who's also a music teacher. Dave was hired as a science teacher right on the senior high, but it was, even though I was teaching at senior high as well, really didn't get to know him as well until a little later on. Probably about 2 years after we were both teaching there, Marie and I went to Estes Park to celebrate an anniversary, June 10th. When we got there, it was snowing like blazes. We had reservations at Grand Lake, and we weren't able to get there. All the routes were blocked with snow. We said, well, I think Dave, Vondra, and Nancy are out here because Dave works at Rocky Mountain National Park during the summers. We made contact and Marie met Nancy at the Estes Park Library, and we found directions to their cabin. And we went out to the cabin and met with Dave and Nancy, and we're guessing, at first I thought it was maybe 1972, but then talking with Tracy, I think probably it's a little more than that because Tracy was a small child. And as we were outside their cabin, Marie bent down to pick a wildflower, and Tracy said, no, you can't do that, that's God's flower. And so Dave thought that right away that the things in the park were to stay in the park, and we appreciated that. Dave coached volleyball and track. I coached boys and girls tennis, and so our seasons kind of coincided, and we spent a lot of time talking about those kinds of things, and our friendship grew from the coaching relationship and the music connection between Nancy and Marie. We began seeing each other in more social settings, and we played bridge, and we went to movies, and sometimes we just sat and talked and enjoyed each other's company. One little aside, as Dave and Nancy's family grew, Dave realized that the Corvette that they had probably wasn't the appropriate car for their growing family. I always wanted a Corvette and had talked about that for a long time, and so I had purchased a new Plymouth Roadrunner, and Dave came to me and said, I need a bigger car, how about if we trade cars? I was absolutely taken back in shock. I thought, wow, finally. And then I thought, this is my first new car ever. And I thought, I think that Corvette's an automatic, and I really would like to have a stick shift, so I turned it down. Well, I later found out the Corvette was a stick, I probably should have done that. So we talked about that offer swap, even as recently as a year or two ago, as we reminisced. You know, Dave was always trying to do his best to provide for his family, and so explored optional ways to supplement his teaching salary. At one time, while I was recording an audio for a star show that he was doing in the Grand Island Planetarium, Dave asked me if I was interested in investing in a lawn care company. We discussed the option at length and looked at all the ins and outs, and finally figured out that with my lack of expertise and our lack of resources, that probably wasn't a good plan for us. It was a sad time then when Dave and Nancy decided that he would leave education and enter the lumber business in Old Iowa. It was a joy, though, that Marie and I were able to visit them in their new home and learn about their new adventures and their new location. Time went on and we saw each other less frequently, but we still managed to get together once in a while in Omaha for dinner or conversation. Then came the news Dave was leaving the lumber business and returning to teaching. That brought us closer together again as the Vondras moved to Blair, and Marie and I were able to visit them there. So later moves found us both in Omaha, in the Omaha area, with both Dave and Nancy teaching the Omaha Public Schools. I was principal at Ralston and Marie was teaching at Westside. Time goes on as we get a little longer in the tooth. Dave and I both retired, and we both volunteered at Eagle Hills Golf Course, where we met another fellow by the name of Danny Purcell, who was also volunteering. We all became friends, we golfed together, and a group of Danny and Dave, Dr. Ken Peters and I, and sometimes another old friend by the name of Norm Peterson, we formed a group and we golfed pretty much every Tuesday, and it was really fun. We'd go out for lunch and we enjoyed each other's company. A shared interest in Nebraska football often found the Myers at the Vondras for a delicious meal prepared by Dave, who's an excellent cook, by the way, and shouting at the football team to try to emulate the great teams of the 1970s. Mexican dishes at the Vondra home and chili at the Myers pre, post, or half times were always enjoyed and left enough time for conversation and the enjoyment regardless of the game's outcomes. When Nancy knew her leukemia was getting the best of her and was going to outdo her ability to fight it, Marie was privileged to work with her and to plan her celebration of life, which Nancy declared, it will be called a funeral. Elizabeth, my daughter Elizabeth, was able to sing at that celebration of life. Marie played the organ. And one of the joys was that the music teachers from Omaha Public School that Nancy taught with put together a collection of songs. But the real joy was they went to Dave and Nancy's apartment and they sang all of the songs that they did at her funeral. And so she got to hear it. What a joy that most of us won't ever have. Dave missed Nancy terribly. And he spoke often about the times they shared and the joys that they shared, spending time together, loving each other, and building their family. Dave Vondra was a man of many talents and gifts. A Rocky Mountain National Park ranger, teacher of science and astronomy, a Hall of Fame award-winning coach, a loving husband, father, treasured friend, gentleman, and a gentle man. I miss you, David. I regret that we did not have at least one more conversation, one more lunch, one more time to be together. But know well, my friend, you will be forever in my heart and in my memory. Each time I go to Estes Park, each time I visit Rocky Mountain National Park, each time I stop at the Estes Park Library, David and Nancy are in my thoughts. Rest well, my friend. Godspeed.
Thank you, sir. It's your turn. If there's someone else who'd like to speak, this is your time to do it. Amazing grace.
All right, well, I definitely don't have as many stories as Bob does, but my favorite story of my grandpa is the one time I like to get lunch with him every once in a while, and I picked him up. Usually we would just eat here because it was easy, but he wanted to go out this day, so he told me to go take his keys and go grab his car and pull it out front for him to, hop in and I'll drive him to wherever we were going. And so I go find his car, I get in, and I get all the seats all adjusted, and the mirrors all adjusted and everything. And I go pick him up, he gets in the passenger seat, and we're driving down Pacific Street. We get probably about maybe a mile out, and he picks up a pair of sunglasses, and he goes, well, are these yours? And I was like, no. And he sets them down, he's like, oh, all right. I keep driving, and then he picks up some letter or something that was on the floor, and he was like, Grace, I don't think this is my car. And I was like, Grandpa, what do you mean this isn't your car? And he's like, I don't think this is my car. None of this is my stuff. And so I'm naturally freaking out. I'm like, whose car am I? And so I flip a Yui and I turn around and he's laughing in the passenger seat. And the only thing I can think is oh my gosh, I hope the cops aren't there.
That's hard to do, folks. You talk about someone who you love. If you ever run for office, I will vote for you. I want to apologize to you if I had some dental work done at 4:30, and so if I drool, it's not your fault. And also, guys in the second row, I need volunteers to load up my U-Haul. I think I'm moving into this place. This is sweet. It's my honor to welcome you here tonight. Thank you for coming. You've probably been thanked a few times, but truly what it means for families when we get together the way we are right now, it goes way beyond words. And sometimes we have kind of like Grace holding the microphone when she's done talking. Sometimes we feel just a little bit awkward when we come to these kind of events because frankly, there's not one of us who knows exactly what to say. And I also put myself in that lot. I wish I knew exactly what to say to you. Your presence, though, your presence gives strength, and it shows that you love, it shows that you care. For those of you who are 36 years old and younger, I swear to God, half of life or more is simply showing up and being there for your people. You don't have to know anything, you don't have to say anything, but when people get together, it does give strength. You will not remember one word that I say tonight, and I got that going for me. But you know what you'll remember? The people who are here. So thank you so much for being here. You see, for most of us, when we hear the news of death of someone who we love, even though we may even know that it's imminent, that it's going to happen, death always surprises us, shocks us even. And we have a wave of grief that rolls through our body and our gut, and we feel pain, and we are overwhelmed at times, and then something mystical takes place. And where most of us go 3/4 numb. I think it's a God-given protection mechanism to humanity when trauma like this happens, because even though death is a natural part of life, death is trauma too. We go 3/4 numb, and then we have a service like this one. Families do a whole lot of work and make 100 decisions they don't want to have to make, and then the most unreasonable part, maybe, of all of it is then everybody's just supposed to go back to their life and keep on going. And the thing is, grief entails pain, and I encourage you to feel that pain when it hits you, when the numb goes away. But grief also is trying to figure out what life is going to look like without being physically present in it. I'd like to ask him about the galactic plate shift. I'm worried about that. The pole shift too. It's keeping me up at night. What I'm going to say to you now, are you waving at me, sir?
Can I just say something brief?
Why not?
My wife and I live here. And,
We're going to be neighbors.
my wife and I live here, and you were perhaps Dave's oldest friend, and I think we might be his most recent friends. We would come down in the morning, and often Dave would be here, and he'd be at one table, ordering one table in the bar, but it was not. And he'd be ordering breakfast and reading the paper. And you'd always say hello to him, and that's pretty much how it went. And then I read somewhere that he was an astronomy major, so finally got him, we would talk about that. And then I started learning more about him. You said this was about faith. Mine's about humility. That's what I remember. We got to know a little more about him, but for example, later I learned that he had a degree from Harvard. I I've never known anybody else who had a degree from Harvard and it didn't come up in the first 10 minutes.
That's truth.
But here's maybe 3 days before he died, we insisted that he come and sit with us and have breakfast. And so we finally got drawing things out of him, and then another man who lives here came down, and I said, I knew, Dave was talking about the National Park Service. And I knew that this other guy who came over and sat down with us, he lived half of his life outdoors. So they started talking about that. And then Kelly came in and sat with us, and we just had this wonderful time. And then 2 days later, we learned that he died. So, you may miss him more than we do, but we sure do miss him. Thanks.
I want you to talk at my funeral, sir.
Okay.
By the
I
way,
on being alive by then.
by the way, Bob, thank you so much for sharing the way you did. That's impressive as well. So grieve because you got to do it. The Marines are gonna get mad at me.
They'll be all right.
Hello, my name's Mark Rammer for the Bill Company. My dad, Jerry, grew up with Dave. Back in Fairbury, they knew each other a long time. And I know Dave. And his girls, my whole life. Yes, you're all older. So, obviously, many times that I knew and saw Dave, many stories that I would have, but one of the things I remember him always talking about, because I have my 2 girls, you always tell me about, because I understand. Girls, I get your pain. I mean, no, he gets your pain. But anyway, but he also would follow it up, he's like, but I do like the blondes. Because my girls are the blondes. So, that was Dave, and he always had a smile on his face. If you knew he was happy and smiled all the time. It was hard to ever remember him not smiling. I really can't remember him, ever. So, it is honoring, yeah. And he liked Jack Daniels, one of his glasses dads, he loved his Jack Daniels. Not all, not a lot. But yes, and during hunting season, they come down and hunt. So.
They talked about their final hunting seasons, just the rifles.
Out the window. Oh, well, yeah, that's true. They started hunting deer, was always. Yeah.
Didn't you say how long they knew each other?
Yeah, so they grew up together. My
So
wife.
you were.
She reminds me of everything I forget. Yes, they would come out, they did hunt deer. He still has land down there.
70 years.
70 years. But no, I started, sit in tree stands, hunt your deer and all that stuff. We're out there in the fields, walking along. And it slowly got to like, well, maybe we'll just stay in the car. And then roll down the window. Or there'd be the times that maybe Dave would be over the blind over here and my dad would be over there and he'd come over. You go over the blind and find him sleeping. Over there, and maybe like probably 3 deer standing right in front of him too. While he was sleeping, so.
That's how
it
the
was-
occurrence
yeah.
happened. He was sleeping once and Dad woke him up and Dave actually shot the deer through the tent.
Yeah, so too many stories I remember right now. He was just a wonderful man. We loved him like a second father. I think he was. So. Okay.
Will you tell me and I'll say it?
No.
He's never been so public speaking. And Dave liked to stand in the background and listen to Nancy and Mom talk all the time. The last lunch we got to have with him, the girls and I, he got us each bibs to wear. So that we could keep clean. He thought he was pretty
large and they had something funny on the front that maybe the other grandkids know and maybe pull them out for you guys too.
We just didn't want to be the only one wearing it.
I think he took his off, if I remember, and gave it to us.
I have so many fond memories because all of us, the girls and the three of us in our family were all born within months of each other. So even as they grew up, they made sure that they were involved. I have pictures of Tracy and I growing up in the cabins in the forest. In the summers we'd go spend with them. And then along came the second set, there were pictures, and then when the third set came along, there aren't as many pictures. Like they were busy.
Can't capture greatness.
They did, they got Tracy and I on all the pictures. But Dave and Nancy were a constant presence in our house, and they're just such amazing people. And after Nancy died, Kelly and I were talking about how they probably met up there at the gates, and they had their perfectly coiffed hair, and their nails that don't chip, and their heels that don't hurt. And then we would laugh uproariously because, no, Aaron turned out like that. But we're grateful that we had him in our lives, and that he and Dad kept in touch from the Fairbury days through Dave moving in over here so that they'd be close together.
Yeah.
Started living not too far. Born and did it here too.
This summer on the train.
They worked the railroad gang together, my dad and Dave.
For how long?
Pay for, you can pay for college by working a summer back then on the railroad gang, and that's what they do.
2 summers you did that?
2 summers.
Mhm. Where all did you go?
Oh, Fairbury to Denver.
Yeah.
They built the bridges on some of the railroad
Did
lines.
you get into trouble?
Nothing that's on record. Nothing that's on record.
There's something on record. What about the couple that you guys were the witnesses for their wedding in a bar in the middle of the winter?
No, not in the winter.
Wasn't the winter.
No.
But that all happened.
But yeah,
But it wasn't in the winter.
no,
When was it?
in the summer.
Any other funny memory?
Yeah, but there isn't time.
Most of them are not appropriate. As we got older, we would hear the stories, and I know that I, for one, would blink and say, oh, that's where I got it from.
Is there anyone else? Yeah.
Here we go. I got y'all, you don't need the shades.
He knows how to ride that wheelie.
He doesn't have a choice.
So no one knows what happens to us when we die. We need to be honest about that. That is why people fear death. And many people, they're able to come to grips with it. And it isn't just people of faith, it's universally, sometimes because of that natural order of things, that traditions are handed down from generation to generation, and many people are able to be at peace with that. Not everybody gets that gift. What I'm going to say to you now comes from Christian thought, and it's kind of like an AA meeting now. Take it or leave it. Take what you own, what you can, what you want. In Christian thought, and if you were able to be present when Dave died, you would be able to feel it, that his spirit no longer resided inside of his body. And the great recycling of all things in nature, his body that eventually let him down, like it will for all of us. Our bodies will either break or wear out, and we too will die. But that the church calls death separation, and it's one of the idioms of the word. And I love the image of flying away to be with God. Christians believe that Dave's gone on to be with God. in Einsteinian thought, if you remember the laws of thermodynamics, energy never goes away. It just changes into another form. It cannot be erased. So tonight, in our hopes and dreams and in our faith and in God's graciousness, we trust and believe that Dave is now at peace, experiencing wholeness that most of us don't get in this life. We also believe that he's experiencing some kind of reunion with all the people that he has had to grieve for, and that's mind-blowing stuff to me every time I say it out loud. What an amazing conversation he must be having. And I wish that took the pain of grief away. It does not, but it does give us food for thought. It gives us motivation to live. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I firmly believe that when we take something good that's been given to us freely by someone who we love, and when they die and they are away from us, when we give that freely away to another human being, we honor them. We keep their memories alive. And for people of faith, I kind of think that's how we try to honor God. So I'm going to close the service with these words that are used in the Judeo-Christian ethic, and they now come to fruition for David Vondra. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. From the dust, David's body was created. To the dust, his body has now returned. We hesitantly, and also with hope, commend his spirit to God, where God has given it to us. I had permission to use these words from the family, and they are traditional words. Jesus of Nazareth, he gathered his closest followers together, and he broke some news to them that we never want to hear about our own people. That is that he would suffer and then die. And the Gospel of John records their strong reaction. Jesus then spoke these words. I leave with you this evening. I do believe he speaks them to us as well. When he said, let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house, there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. My condolences to all of you. We're going to listen to Dr. Holly is going to sing a final song, and then we're invited to go out into the courtyard, and we're going to witness the military honors that Dave deserves. against military honors, please stand and we'll